I'm Robert Surton. I'm chairman of the board of the Care for the Troops charity here in Georgia. We began this primarily out of my personal experience of being a combat veteran from Vietnam and carrying home a lot of issues that I did not recognize as being war-related. Hypervigilance, startle reflex around great holidays like 4th of July and New Year's Eve when things were blowing up, and it used to upset me a lot. And certain decision-making processes that I went through that I thought were perfectly reasonable in the circumstances I lived in, nobody else did. And what I learned over 30 years of prayer and meditation and psychotherapy and finally a specific therapy for post-traumatic stress discovered that all of that was related to a fairly brief encounter I had when I was fighting the war in Vietnam. It took 30 years to discover that. And if we can help our young troops as they come home to discover what's going on with them much quicker so that they can be fully productive and fully acclimatized back to their civilian lives, that's what we're all about.
The website actually that we have launched is called careforthetroops.org, and it's meant to be a website that's used for reference, research. It's an information resource for multiple audiences. Not only the men and the women and the extended families who need help, but also for the service providers and for those people in the communities who will be in contact with the men and women who are returning so that they're better educated to recognize triggers and symptoms and be more sensitive to their needs.
Several ways in which Care for the Troops is intent upon accomplishing this. First is awareness training for faith community leaders, parish clergy and what have you, who need to understand what combat's about deployment and how family separation affects people. The other is to organize caregivers, both marriage and family therapists and psychologists and others who deal with post-traumatic stress, so that they can be a resource entity to us so we can refer our troops, our veterans, to them when the need arises to make sure that they and their families are well cared for.
We feel that there's both a government requirement to help them, but there's also a private sector requirement to help them, and that's really what we are as the nonprofit, is a formation of many civilian components to help with this problem of assisting the men and women who are helping us in serving in the military or around the military. The current conflicts have certainly increased that number, but what's also going on is there are many veterans from previous wars who are having mental health issues being triggered by the current situation. So what we're attempting to do will also be helpful to them.
Right now, Care for the Troops is a new organization. And so we're just getting started. Our first training session was for psychologists and caregivers down in South Georgia, but we're also consulting with the Roosevelt Institute in Warm Springs and some work with the Warrior Transition Brigade at Fort Benning. And I met with them, some of those warriors, returned warriors, about a month or so ago in May of this year, and saw some hope spark in their lives, in their eyes, as they heard about what we were preparing to offer for them.
What helps drive us and motivates us in this effort is a realization that the needs that exist today, if they stay unaddressed, are only going to get worse as time gets on. And we don't want to look back years from now, 10, 15 years from now, and say, why didn't we start addressing the mental health needs of these returning veterans? So we need to upgrade our whole ability and attitude in society. Now, I was in the military for about 10 to 14 years, and I served during the Vietnam era. And I know that there was some angst that went on during that time. What is different today, and it's already, to me, very positive, is that our society is very accepting of the sacrifices and understanding of the sacrifices that the people are undergoing who are serving our country. But a key issue that's different today is the increased amount of stress and trauma that these troops are affecting. That can have an effect on our society that we want to avoid. And the way to avoid it is by paying attention to their mental health needs now not 10 years from now, when it will only be worse and it will only be harder to address.
We also have a vested stake in the whole country and people who are not Episcopalians to make sure that they too are restored fully to their families and to their communities when they come home from serving the country.
This is not a pro-war or an anti-war issue. This is a people issue. So churches and churches, again, are all about people.
The thing that gives me the greatest satisfaction right now is seeing the huge number of people throughout the communities who are willing to reach out a hand to help the men and women who fought our wars so that when they come home, they come all the way home.